2024. Please silence your phones if you have such devices with you. And we're going to, for people who want to speak this evening on any of the items we have, please, if you would, fill out a speaker card. It's quick and painless. All you want is your name and perhaps how to pronounce it. And that'll help us move the public periods along quicker and make sure that we spell your name for the record. As we do always, let's begin this meeting with a moment of silence, and tonight, if we would also keep in mind our veterans on this Veterans Day. Please join me. Thank you. And now, if you would, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a presentation, and I'll start that one off. New Hope for Kids. Okay, we have a sure, this is on. All right. We have a special proclamation this evening for one of our excellent nonprofits that are here in Maitland, New Hope for Kids. And I will read out the proclamation, and Mr. Brian Clark, who is the president and CEO of New Hope for Kids, is here with us this evening to receive it. Whereas New Hope for Kids, a nonprofit organization located in the city of Maitland, Florida, and whereas New Hope for Kids is unique in that it brings two children's programs to our community. One is the Wishes for Kids program, which grants wishes to Central Florida children between the ages of 3 and 18 who have a life-threatening illness. And the other is the Center for Grieving Children, which provides support in a warm and friendly environment for children and families who are grieving the loss of a loved one. And whereas New Hope for Kids will be sponsoring Children's Grief Awareness Day in Maitland, Florida on Thursday, November 21st, 2024. And whereas on November 21st, 2024, citizens and communities throughout Central Florida are encouraged to wear blue in an effort to raise awareness and show their support for grieving children and New Hope for Kids that seeks to serve our young people impacted by the reality of death. Now, therefore, I, John Lowndes, Mayor of the City of Maitland, Florida, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim Thursday, November 21st, 2024 as Children's Grief Awareness Day. Mr. Clark, would you like to say a couple of words? If you have anything to do,
no, thank you very much for the support from the community. It's very important work that you do, and we very appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we're lucky to have you. Thank you for all the work you do.
A great job.
Okay, next we have a presentation on the Public Library in Quinstron Park schematic design update. Mark, would you like to introduce?
Sure. Just briefly. As you all know, we've been going through, following the approval of the referendum, we've been going through the design process. The first piece of that was the conceptual design, which went through last year, that sort of laid the pieces of the puzzle together and got the initial architectural design together and some very, very rough interior layouts. We're currently in the schematic design, actually looking to wrap that up by January. And again, as a reminder, it's sort of a three-phase process we're working through here. First, we do the schematic design, which we're going to be touching on a little bit tonight. Then we go into the design development, where we start putting the the meat on the skeleton that we put together during the schematic design. Then we roll into actually the construction drawing, which is really what we'll be basing all of our construction estimates on ultimately when this comes down to it. So tonight we have with us Peter Pollock from HBM Architects, along with Kevin Kennedy joining us remotely, and Ryan Seacrest here live, who's been working on some exterior designs. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Peter to start us off. Can you hear us okay, Peter?
I can, Mark. Thank you. So thanks everyone this evening for your time. Mark mentioned the little bit of the agenda. Kevin, if you could advance the slide one notch for us. Tonight we have really 5 things to touch on with you. Mark kind of gave the introductions a little bit. Kevin and I from HBM are remote, and then Ryan is in person to speak to the landscape design. The quiz I will be talking a bit about Quinstrong Park and the components that are under consideration for incorporating into the project. And along with that, we have some initial intersection studies, crossings from Backwood Maitland Avenue to the site that Ryan will present as well. After that second item, we'll pause for a little bit of Q&A on your end for any questions that are directly related to the site. Maybe about 15 minutes of Q&A, because we want to make sure we do leave time for item 4 on the agenda, which is to share with you the updated floor plans, the program of space, and how Morgan is working on the interior. When you left off our last presentation, it was still rather what you refer to as a bubble diagram. I think you'll see in these plans that a lot of the discussions have resulted in a very functional and flexible plan for the library space. We will then have additional Q&A for that component. Work up with next steps and talk a little bit about the schedule and the immediate next steps as we move into the first of the year. With that, Ryan, I'll turn it over to you to dive into the site.
Sure, thanks, Peter. Good evening, Mayor, Council. So what we're going to do is, a lot of you have seen the plan over some time. It's been about a year plus since we started this effort. So the plan you see is going to be familiar and aesthetic, but we have updated the plan with all the changes that have been made through the decisions that we've had throughout the last year. And if Kevin, if you don't mind to advance one slide. So on the screen is the updated site plan, and a couple notable things that you'll see advanced and familiar is the updated parking configuration. So our last meeting, a decision was made to place the parking between the Jermaine Marble building and the proposed library site. That parking has been moved to the, I'll say the south end of it was shrunk to the north, and then we reallocated some parking over onto Ventress, if you remember, in the slip lane configuration over here on the south side of the site. And how that would work is for everyone here in attendance, as a car off interest would slip in and have the ability to park in a parallel parking space and then back out and leave that space. And overall, we found that we've added parking to the site with this shift. So we didn't lose any parking, only reallocated in different locations on the site. Some other items that we've addressed is where a book drop-off might be located. So you'll see it here with this letter R is located, and it's hard to see, so I'm going to point it out. So that will be here, and the intention is that you would come in off of Packwood, navigate the parking lot, stop at this location, drop your book, and then navigate out of the site. I would say, lastly, an advancement that we've made to the plan is, and while this is still in review with our civil engineer, is the pond. We're showing it as a dry pond. Information that we've gotten from Public Works, the elevation of the site, is that this is high and dry. There's a good chance that we'll be able to have this as a dry pond, which would shrink it. We have not explored shrinking it yet because we do want to get geotechnical back, confirm this, get with our civil, and then get the correct sizing. At least it's going to be dry. At most, you may gain some space on the site when this thing shrinks down. Without holding water, you can actually shrink a pond usually if you're getting percolation. So to go through some of the site, I'd like to do, well, one last thing, I'm sorry. So we had intersection studies that we did, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but we've extended the plan to include the intersection of Maitland Avenue and Packwood to create a safer crossing from this site over onto the library site in the future. And that's trying to deal with crossing the railroad, an intersection that has limited space for folks standing at the intersection and limited space for signaling that a pedestrian would cross. So in review of the site plan, to catch us up, outside of the elements that I just went through, is a reminder of the schematic design that we had about a year ago surrounding all these other elements. So this lawn, well, let me start off as if you're approaching the site, entering it towards the library building, coming from this facility. So imagine you're approaching the building. We went with this configuration. We went through all the good time spent in figuring out the right location for the parking lot so we could kind of celebrate the corner of Maitland Avenue and Packwood with this building. So a proud civic structure that sits on the corner, much like the building you're sitting in today, as another cornerstone of Maitland. So you'll be greeted by a beautiful facade, a plaza with some signage that indicates it right there on the corner of Packwood and Maitland, and a pedestrian or a car would be greeted by this intersection with a grand arrival. A car would continue its way up into the parking lot on Packwood, whereas a pedestrian could enter the plaza, move up through past a potential fountain space, seating opportunities, shaded areas with trees, and enter one of the main entries into the library, and then also have the ability to enter, as you'll see in the plans as you get into the architecture here, an open expansive space that celebrates the outdoors. If you're a vehicle and you come in, you park in the parking lot, you walk up to a secondary or an equally pronounced entrance into the building and go into the same space in the center of the building that intersects with the other entryway. Outside of that, you'll notice there's the achieved connection of all the open space. So the parking change that we made that I mentioned earlier drew the parking lot toward the north, freeing up a little bit of space between the parking lot and where the pond location is located. What this did is allowed us to connect the green space next to the Germain Marble building. There's an event space here. You'll notice that there's a pad there with a tent on occasion during events. It allows that to connect a little bit better, leave some open space, and also if you were to navigate that open space, the park feels a little bit more contiguous. As I mentioned, if the pond were to get smaller, as we find out, that's only going to benefit that. And without the water in the pond, you'll get even a better feeling of the expansiveness of the space. It'll truly just be a green open space. Then of course you have sidewalks that play off the main axes of the building. So you'll notice the strong axes that the architects have put into the building, we've relayed those into the landscape. So main walkways that stretch to focal points, that could be places for art to rest, to celebrate the kind of cultural corridor that we're in, and the museum and the other art features that are here in the area, as well as some shade structures speckled throughout. These little colored circles that you see where the letter H is would be shade structures that filter sun. You can sit under there, read a book. We know sun is hot in the summertime. This would allow folks to go out and enjoy the outside in a moment of respite. Additionally, there's a large shade structure. I know it's hard to see. We're maintaining a lot of the tree canopy that exists out there today, which is important to us. So freeing up that by removing that parking can let that area thrive, be open green space, but also place a larger shade structure here that would act as perhaps an outdoor classroom, a space that is rentable to the community to go out and use. You can imagine folks could have birthday parties out there. Outdoor classrooms could happen in this event area. It is really meant to be flexible. And I would say the last component is second to last component, is this large space out here. So it's really a flexible lawn. So again, hitting the emphasis on flex space. We don't want to over-program a space. We want it to live with the community as the seasons change, as event needs change. Day-to-day use may offer different opportunities to do things out here. We want to leave large, open, expansive green spaces that the community can program or just have as large open space during a normal day. So what we provided is an area that orients toward the back of the building. And there were earlier concepts that we're still maintaining, although the architecture has changed a bit, where you could have a presentation or an event that would be situated at this end of the building, or the south end of the building. And this event lawn would have gentle terraces that folks could sit on during an event and face the end of the building. But those wouldn't be so large that you couldn't utilize the open space on a day-to-day. And in fact, those could be a playful element or an artistic element that grace that lawn for folks to enjoy. Within that area, there's also small private spaces. So under the tree canopy that I mentioned that we're maintaining, there's 3 small intimate spaces that folks can come out of the library covered by tree canopy with benches meant for small huddles and tables. You could sit out there, read a book. Again, there could be small gathering spaces, classrooms, what have you, could happen in that moment. And then just beside of that, and intentionally, we've placed the children's garden, which functions directly adjacent to the interior children's area in the library. You'll see in advancements of the architecture, there's a colonnade that goes through there, so you have a covered portion that is adjacent to that children's garden to provide shade. But also, this would be sort of a sensory garden, or sorry, more of a playful moment for kids to go out. And when I say sensory, I mean different colors, elements, plants, smells, that kind of thing is going to happen. We do know that it's close to the sunrail track. You're going to get that every so often, but we do know that if it's done safely, just as it's done out here in the park next to City Hall, with a barrier and a screen, heavy landscaping, but not enough to cover it completely. A train going by on occasion, or even on a repetitive basis, can be something that the kids can look at and enjoy from a safe distance. And that was something that was mentioned in the past, is that in fact when the trains go by here in this park, kids really get excited to see that. And of course it's done at a safe and blocked off manner. I think I'm going to pause there and open it up to questions. There are some technical things on here. You know, there's a generator pad. Of course, the utility of the dumpster is located in this location. But I'd like to stop and open it up for questions. There'll be more time for questions at the end, but we want to give a brief moment just to focus on the park, 10 minutes or so, and then go through the architecture, and we can open it up at the end for questions once again.
Anybody? Council have questions?
Yeah, first I just want to say I love it. You know, we've given you our concerns and you've addressed them, and I love the layout. The only thing I have a question about was in that northwestern corner, there's Q, and that is a screening wall. So I know that they have the event pad there for arts and history, and I think last time that we chatted, they wanted that, and I think it should be open up. But that was, I think we wanted that open up so it can look out. Okay. Now, if there was some discussion or something else, but I think I remember that being the discussion that we wanted it opened up so you can see the whole park.
I think that was a holdover. At one point, a parking configuration went up into that little lawn area, if you recall. We removed that, of course. And that wall is low, and at the time it was meant to create a barrier between the cars. We maintained it. We didn't know if there was a separation that you'd still want. You could see over it, but we could totally remove that wall, get the hedge cleaned up so there was a more seamless connection between the two, if that's what's desired.
Yeah, because it really stops you from walking. I mean, even though it's small, I mean,
yeah,
you know, my 80-year-old mom's not going to jump over it.
Right. Okay. 10-4.
Lindsay?
Thank you. Okay, a couple of things I wanted to ask about. First of all, with the entrance coming in off of the corner of Maitland and Packwood, is there, and I noticed this when on one of the, you know, in the designs when we were dealing with the driveway and the parking situation, is there a reason that it's coming in at an angle off of the corner of Maitland and Packwood instead of right off of the corner? And the reason I ask is because most of the people who are going to be coming across that corner are, I don't know, it just visually it seems like it would want to come directly from the corner at Packwood and Maitland rather than coming up and then jutting in. I'm just wondering if this is a stylistic thing or if there's a reason that situationally the building needs to have the entrance there.
I think partially both. So we were trying to get people moving towards the front door, but I can see what you're saying. If someone comes across, you know, it's a very wide area, so it's probably 20 feet wide from the smallest point to the road. So a person kind of comes across, they walk straight up Packwood, and then they make their way in that plaza and orient themselves straight towards the front door. But we could explore, it's been quite a long time since we've explored that area in detail, opening that up so someone can make a more direct route.
Yeah, And the reason I'm raising this is because when I was talking to Mark earlier today about the intersection, one of my recommendations and things I'd like us to look at is actually doing a diagonal intersection across Packwood and Maitland Avenue instead of having to jut across and then make two lefts or to make two turns, so you're crossing traffic twice. If there's going to be barriers going up to stop traffic anyways, it would be more efficient for the pedestrians with strollers, with kids, to be crossing the intersection once. And if you're doing that at a diagonal, now you're not facing the building, right? You're not facing the entrance to the building. So it stylistically, I don't know, just it seems like it might visually make more sense, but that's not my area. I'm just bringing it up. I'm having a bit of flashback to when we talked about Independence Square, when I look at E and I, which is the event lawn, and then the pergola, because both of those things were both promised in the original design of Independence Square, and both of those ended up getting nixed. So I'm wondering if we are in a situation where, again, we have to make cuts. I can see living without it, but E, how does that affect the lawn terracing if we're not terracing it? Is it meant to be done at an elevation to graduate the land, or is it flat and those are just benches?
Yeah, so they're more like benches. It would slope gently, but if you remove them, it wouldn't be a civil site problem. So I don't think that we could design that with in mind if we got into a V situation, that they could live without it and you wouldn't miss it.
And then one more thing, and I promise this is the last one, is the deck and the sculpture over the dry pond. I see it as a wet pond. That makes sense to have a deck over it, but a deck over nothing seems odd.
Certainly, I agree, and we haven't changed that yet. I had the designers change it to green in anticipation of it changing that way, but when we confirm that, certainly we will not have a deck there.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything? Okay. We're good. What next?
Okay. Well, we can move on to the interior discussions of the library plans. Brian, did you want to say anything for the diagram?
I'll leave that up to council. We had some zoom-in diagrams of the intersection that I explained.
We should walk through those.
Would you like to go through that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we enhanced the intersection, and I think that's a great additional option that we can explore, is to do a diagonal, and we could explore that further moving forward. We would like to show you an idea that we came up with in anticipation of this. So what you'll see on the screen is the blue is the existing approach sidewalk that crosses the railroad tracks, and everything else you see in red is new. So we recommended widening the area on the corner. Right now there's not quite a large landing there. You kind of walk up and it's half gravel, half concrete, not a comfortable pedestrian environment at all. So we'd like to widen that out the best we can within the city-owned right-of-way and not getting into the railroad's right-of-way, and creating a situation where you can stop, look at traffic, and also actuate a pedestrian crossing signal. There'd be the large signs with the pedestrian and the flashing beacons as well. And then the second thing you'll notice is as you start to approach across and you get a signal, there's an existing concrete median there today. That is about 5 feet or so wide. We need to get survey on that to determine. But you can cross that street and you can stop in that moment and again get to a place of refuge if for some reason cars continue to pass and you needed to stop. And also it's offset intentionally. And that's a design characteristic that allows you to, when you get to that point, you're forced to walk the opposite direction towards traffic in the opposing lane. And that gets your eye on traffic, it gets the motorist's eye on you, and then when you're clear to walk, you make it across the next length onto a new landing that exists today, but we would expand it to capture someone there. And again, you also have the rapid flashing beacon. You make your way onto what is now a paver area in front of this business. And then again, navigate over to another enhanced crosswalk that is high contrast, high visibility. And then right into the plaza we were discussing a moment ago and making your way into the front door. The other thing we would mention is removing the crosswalk that's on the south side of the intersection. Right now that goes to a corner that is a little bit more precarious There's some railroad equipment there. There's not a sidewalk that continues over the tracks in that location until you get much further towards City Hall or towards this drive lane that you can see. So we're saying let's not invite someone to that area where it's not safe, or they might be inclined to walk in the street or otherwise. Get rid of it, orient everybody through this new enhanced crosswalk that we're going to put some investment into. So that's the concept we have today. We could open it up for questions on this item if you'd like as well.
Anybody have any comments on that?
I'm just interested in what, Lindsay's bringing to the table with it, going at an angle. So I'd like to hear about it. If it's a way that it's going to really make it faster and better, I'd love to hear about it. The only thing I have is it looks like you would spend more time in the intersections if you went that way, but back to her point, you wouldn't have to go up and over like you're playing a, game of dig dug or something, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I know of a couple locations locally that have a diagonal. Downtown Orlando, by their city hall, there's a large diagonal, goes from the Bohemian across to City Hall, and that one does well. You can do the other corners as well, so it's kind of 4 crosses, and then the diagonals you have 5. I think it does put people in the intersection longer, but it does reduce the amount of conflicts. Point of conflicts are what we look for, so any of these point of conflicts will be any of these corners you see. 2 crosswalks mean 2 different points of conflict. 1 crosswalk certainly means 1, but we also look at the duration that someone's in the lane. So if I'm doing a diagonal from, say, this red spot and I go over to Maitland, my concern is, for the same reason that we did the offset and you have people shifting their eyes toward traffic so you can see what's coming at you, if you're walking towards the library site to this corner, there's a period in which your back is to oncoming traffic and you don't know if someone's not obeying traffic laws and they come up on you. And the same problem exists in the inverse coming from the library. For that reason, it would not be my preferred just because you can't see traffic, although it does reduce the point of conflict.
Well, I know this has to go through many more processes before it comes back to us for a final, so
And
maybe
we did present this to Public Works, and for now they endorsed the one we have on the screen.
I think my only concern with, and I think obviously from a safety standpoint, I hear exactly what you're saying. I totally get it, and those are concerns of mine as well. But I also know that our long-term goals for Maitland Avenue is that it is not going to continue to always be a busy throughway for people to be able to access a shortcut through the middle of our city. We want to do long-term development that actually makes that more of a pedestrian-friendly road for small businesses, and encouraging a traffic calming situation where pedestrians are shuttled into a center guardrail because of traffic speed is exactly the opposite of the message we want to be sending about that intersection. I would prefer, if the reason we have to look at a way to make the diagonal work is because we've got to put in a 4-way stop there, I think that would be a much more sensible way, not only for dealing with traffic, but also for dealing with the pedestrians. And I think that that moves us closer to our goals of making that more of a side street instead of a main thoroughfare for traffic.
Sure. I hear you. I suppose the only point of clarification I have, and I think you're right, if you go up there and you stop in a median, if there was traffic going and you got stuck there, that's not a comfortable situation to be in. The idea would be that when you get to that point, the crosswalk is open, so you're making a full trip across just as you would with the diagonal. With the only added benefit is that it's a methodology meant to make sure people are looking at traffic at folks that are not obeying the law in that 4-way stop. But we can explore it. I think we can do an option where we do the diagonal, just as we did this one, to weigh the pros and cons and put it in front of folks. The design can move forward with the library site while we're working that out.
Yeah, and as we talked about at the last internal meeting, this is sort of at that point where we do a little bit of a handoff from the library design team and park design to the designers who are going to be working with the downtown Maitland plan, the phase 2 of that, working with Metro Plan. The scope here was to show that you could get pedestrians across, so this is an option that does get pedestrians across. We would take this design hand it off to our partners, the MPO, with their design team, have them take a look at it in total with the downtown area to see what best works and have that ready by the time we're all ready for construction. That'd probably be the most efficient way to deal with this.
Okay. All I have to say is I'm glad you're looking at that, because I think that's, I mean, we all knew it was a problem, and that getting across Maitland Avenue there was going to be very difficult, and I'm glad you included that in the scope and are working with that. So it's a holistic approach.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Brian. We can move to the floor plans now and talk a little bit about the development functional plan of the library. Since we were talking about site-related approach, primarily from Maitland and Packwood Avenue, I'll start there with that entry. There is 2 entries to this building, to the library building, primarily because of 2 major objectives that were asked of us to consider, and that is 1, pedestrian travel from Maitland to this site from the north, and then an obvious connection from a parking area into the library building. So we have one on the west end of the building too. Those are all noted. Both of those are noted with the red triangles. Talking about the one from Packwood, and Ms. Harrison, this might speak a little bit more to kind of your question of the overall configuration of a plaza on Packwood, which is further to be explored. But the entry of Packwood, which is mainly the connection to the downtown Maitland area, is central to the building form and is also aligned with a nice passage through the building that would then exit out on the south edge of the building to allow people to enter into the park. And that entrance is also then connected with the one from the west off the parking area. They would converge at a central point in this building that is really at kind of the heart of the operations, the central service point. That's that pink square right in the middle where library staff would be meeting and greeting and helping direct and orienting everyone to the library functions. To talk a little bit more about the one to the west off the parking area, expanding a little bit on Ryan's discussion, there is a drop-off area. And Kevin, if you can kind of cursor your pointer over these areas as I'm talking, but the drop-off area for patron pickup or drop-off is right there in front of it.
Sorry. Can you see my cursor?
No, I can't.
I can't.
I'll do it.
But maybe Ryan, you do, okay.
Ryan's got it.
Okay, all right, thanks, Ryan. So drop-off area for patron pickup or drop-off really would lead to the entry of the library. The 2 spaces to the north of that drop-off area are handicap parking spaces. Those would have what we call zero entry curb, so that mobility would be really an easy approach from those spaces onto the surface, the walk surface up to the entry of the library. Also at that north zone, and in that smaller red triangle is the delivery access for functionality of the library space that enters right into the staff workspace. So there is a lot happening on that west side, but I think organized in a way that's very, very functional and applicable to everything that happens there. If you might recall, we had some discussion last time about book drop. And we did incorporate the one that Brian mentioned earlier, presentation in the site where you can drive up to and drop your material. In discussions about people walking into the library, there is no longer a book drop on the face of the building, but there is one when you come in the entry, right at the service point, there is a book return. And that was discussed from a functional standpoint with the library team to be the preferred route in that regard. So if you were to come in the entry from the west through the vestibule, the white space that links all of this great program space on this first floor together is what we're really calling the main hall or the grand hall. It's a space where it's a very inviting space, a very flexible space, a space where people that enter in the building are greeted with staff assistance greeted with library material. The little orange squares are representative of library kiosks that would have book material on display that can be changed out on a regular basis, on a frequent basis to make it fresh and new. There is along the edge of the wall that you would come into and defined by that hall and the children's area and the restrooms and the meeting room there would be a really great grand kind of new material on display, shelving that would also incorporate some of the A&H art and sculpture components. So this space is really meant to be a very welcoming, very flexible, very orienting kind of space to the overall building. From there, the first floor plan is really broken up into 3, maybe 4 quadrants. First quadrant on the upper left is the staff space. It's immediately behind the service point. It's a space that is open work plan with circulation services office located in that particular zone. Again, the access to the site from the northwest for deliveries, functional in and out of material. Also in this quadrant on the northwest is some infrastructure space, the mechanical space, IT closet, some storage space that will run the kind of the HVAC mechanical systems of the building. In addition to this quadrant, there's the Friends book sale space with their storage area, and then right next to that is the elevator that will get people from first to second floor. The quadrant to the right, the northeast quadrant, is the children's zone. So that blue and lighter blue space will encompass all of the collection, material, staff support, and what is referred to as play, learn, and grow, or early literacy components up in the very northeast quadrant of that zone there. The lighter blue space is a program space, a space for a multitude of different things and activities to happen. It can occupy 99 people, but with chairs, about 55 people. So that is a space that is very, very heavily used currently in the library and will be expanded in this design to accommodate even more programming. While in this zone here, I want to mention another little red triangle. That's kind of on the right, on the east-hand side. There's an access point here that will get to the children's outdoor space that Ryan mentioned in his part of the presentation for additional outdoor programming and use for access from the children's area to that space. Just down from that zone then is the main restroom. This is a multi-stall restroom, men and women, located here. And then also to mention, just behind it, located in an efficient kind of proximity to mechanicals, the plumbing is a children's restroom that is accessed off the children's space. Continuing down to the bottom zone on the bottom right is the large meeting room. Just north of the meeting room is a demo kitchen, a space that can be utilized for presentation and instruction with associated storage space. Also a storage space for table and chair storage for the large meeting room. And the large meeting room has a capacity of 132 seating and is dividable, so it has a movable partition that is about 1/3, 2/3 dividing the space so that there's 2 access points, can handle multiple programs at once. From the meeting room space, there is access to an outdoor area for either breakout or expanded programming. That space happens to be under the second floor level, so that it is undercover, shielded with shading for the summer sun. And then immediately north of that space is a self-service vending area for small snack or refreshment while visiting the library. In the main hall there are 2 access stairs open stairs that will get people from this first floor to the second floor. One is to the north, immediately adjacent to the entrance off Packwood, and the second is in the kind of angled corner connection near the entry from the parking space. I can move to the second floor and walk you through that here, and then we can pause for any questions you might have or dive into any part of it a little bit more deeper. On the second floor, I think the best starting point would be referencing the two stairs that come up, the one off the Packwood entry on the north edge, and then the one more central to that intersection of that angle. The elevator is that white square just next to the pink square. So those are the two stairs and one elevator that would communicate people from the first floor to the second floor. On the second floor, the white area is a little smaller version of that main hall on the first floor. Again, utilizing some displays for material display, flexible space. These displays here, as well as on the first floor, would all be on casters, so they can be moved around, and they can be changed up as needed as the library goes through the course of a year. So like the first floor, there's 3 zones, perhaps to speak to here. The top left, again, above the first floor would be staff support space, workroom, and offices for the director and public services and HR, and a break room. And then the first center space as you move east would be adult collection, and then further across from the entry of the stair would be additional collection for adult collection. Also public access computers at this point. And then on the far right, the east side of the building in that aqua blue zone is the teen space. And this teen space currently is being discussed as a defined space, a specific space for teens with their collection and their amenities, perhaps study tables, tutoring tables, electronics, and it is currently open but divided by shelving and cabinetry to create a zone of identifiable separation. Immediately south of that in the red zone is the makerspace. It's a space that is ultra flexible for a multitude of different things. We often recommend that libraries change out what they provide in a makerspace to keep it interesting and new and expansive. So that space has associated storage area for its equipment. And then also by the public access computers is the business center for adult use. The light blue space, as we come now south, is what is referred to the classroom space. That is the space that was defined to be the senior center type of functional space. It is a flexible space meant for different types of programming that the library would collaborate with. Just south of there are 3 small group study rooms that can be used by anyone in the community for tutoring or counseling or any type of small group meeting that would need a space like that. Then the large green space to the south is really the majority of the adult collection space. So what you see in these plans as a orange colored element is generally shelving, and all of the shelving we provide in the library is low shelving, 66 inches or lower, so that there is a good visibility across the space. No longer are putting 98-inch high shelving in libraries that break up spaces from a visual standpoint. The very far south point of this second floor, that light blue space, is a very nice seating area that overlooks the park space with a nice window wall. And then all of this along the south and east side of the building has access to a outdoor terrace for seating and table and chair seating, as well as individual seating for somebody to spend some time reading a book or socializing and gathering with people in the community. This outdoor terrace is covered by the roof structure, so it does have some protection, and I think would be a really great amenity that the community would really find a very useful space. The last thing I think I might not have mentioned is right by the elevator service point, that pink square, that's another staff service point. And both the first floor and the second floor, staff have great oversight of the entire area of the floor for safety and access to assistance and help. And both floors are very flexible for accommodating change now and into the future. With that, I will pause and answer any questions, or if you'd like me to dial into any more specifics about the functional plan at the moment as it exists.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the design? I have one question. It was more of a comment, and it has to do with makerspace. And as I understand it, it's that red space that's on the second floor, the slide we have up now.
That's correct, Mayor.
And it seems to me to be kind of tucked away and not very highly visible to anybody who, you know, is that the type of space which would have, I don't know, a laser printer or all kinds of interesting things that might engage people? And if so, isn't that something that perhaps would be more appropriate on the first floor, or more, it's just, you know, I don't know how that works, or how useful that space is, or how highly in demand it would be, but it seems to be kind of difficult to access, and you'd only know about it if you knew about it.
Right. Well, that's good points. I think first and foremost, the doors leading into that space and the adjacent wall along that edge is intended to be glass, so there is a lot of transparency into the room. It's not just a solid door and a walled-off space. So there is some visibility from the computer area, the adult area in that quadrant. In addition to that, I think there are opportunities for the library to advertise what's happening in that room and other spaces of the library, either with like it's 3D printing. There could be things on display down on the first floor. There could be programs announced on the, we have a number of different video displays throughout the building that can advertise the amenities of the library. You know, it's certainly a space that you might want to more visually advertise, but I don't think it wouldn't be fine. I think this type of space is a desirable space, and I think word of mouth from the library staff is going to advertise this really pretty heavily so that people will know where to go for that.
Okay. And as I wanted to compliment you, I think I like the outdoor spaces. I like the wraparound porch there, and I like the outdoor space on the first floor, which is also covered. It's not often you see those in public buildings, and I think overlooking the park, and that would be something very nice amenity for the library.
Thank you, Mary.
I had a couple questions. On the first floor, the vending area location.
Yeah.
So part of the thought I was thinking with the whole design was to kind of bring people back to that park, and the visual of kind of bringing people through the building to the park. And I just wasn't sure that a vending machine area right off that park, breaking up the lobby, is that the best place for it? I mean, I understand the practicality for people who are sitting outside and coming in and getting a drink, but I don't know that we wouldn't be served by having sitting areas or open space that wouldn't be kind of cordoned off for vending machines, which aren't necessarily visually probably all that appealing.
Yeah. Well, the vending machine is actually deeper in. It's that orange counter, and then there's a square next to that. That is actually what a vending machine would be. And they are not kind of your old cafeteria style things. They're a little bit more visually appealing than they might have been in the past. So I think that the real appeal of the space is that it will be populated with a lot of different types of seating, and I think that is what might draw people in, and whether it's seating outside under the overhang or immediately inside the window wall at a seating area. I think will be a popular place for people to sit. I think it's also kind of associated with the meeting space, that there's either breakout space or extended programming that can happen outside the meeting room. And I think that most of the south part of the building is glass, or a lot of visibility inside and out, from inside out.
I just don't know. I'm sure there are prettier vending machines, but I would find it probably challenging to make it. I would just ask to maybe consider not having, I would think that'd be a great place to have seating and maybe some extension of the meeting area, but I don't know that any kind of vending area is what we want to put kind of right off next to the park, which I thought we were trying to kind of accentuate that visualness through to the park. So that would just be my thought.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a way. I mean, we could look at a number of things. One, maybe an easy shift would be just north of that vending, there's a kind of an orange colored rectangle. That's under the stair run that gets you up to the second floor. Maybe the vending should be tucked under there a little bit more, and that the whole area of that green space and the space, the white space, be developed as more of a dominant, a prominent seating area. That's one. We can look at other scenarios where that could be moved to as well.
I think to me, that's what that looked the most sense to me, is having indoor-outdoor seating that kind of extended from under that covered space where I think is going to be a great area, and then having the indoor space right off of it would seem to make sense to me. So that would be great if you could consider that.
Yeah, it could be like your indoor living room that accesses out to your outdoor patio.
I like that thought. And then on the second floor, to me, the sort of visual kind of great views off of that second floor are going to be obviously to the south, that would be east. But then also that northwest part of the building is going to look over arts and history, and there's going to be other side. That'll be northeast. So yeah, there you go, over there. That's going to be northwest, and if you're looking to the more west-south part of that, that's going to be looking over the park. And under this design, that looks to me like that's going to be kind of closed off space for staff area. And a couple things, I mean, there's a lot of what I viewed as maybe a few offices there, both upstairs and downstairs. And in today's world, I mean, I know a lot of offices are going away from, traditional offices are going away from kind of closed-in office spaces to more open space. And it seemed like we were putting in quite a few offices here, and I'm sure that the librarians spend most of their days interacting with patrons, not in offices. So I don't know if that was the best use of that whole corner, because again, I think there's some opportunity there to have, similar to your kind of study rooms there, that are those private study rooms off of that classroom. Then it would be nice to have rooms like that that looked over on that side of the park. Because to me, I think visually that's going to be a very nice view looking out, and then that will also look, I don't know how tall we'll get, but I don't know if second floor will get a view of Lake Sibilia from that view or not. But that's going to be I think that would be a nice view, and if those were open study rooms with glass walls that were open to the rest of the library, you'd be letting a lot of light in and view corridors that would take you down to other parts of the park. So I would just ask to maybe consider the need for so many offices, because there's already 2 or 3 downstairs, and kind of maybe having work areas for staff that are more open, which I think is more of the trend. The workspace, we don't have as much work materials, everything is digital, it's a computer, it's a traditional workspace these days, so I don't know if we need as big of office spaces, and if we can maybe utilize what I think are going to be great views for more public interaction.
Okay. Yeah, I think that corner is a very nice, I don't know if it gets views to the lake at the second level here, but one thing to keep in mind in terms of the staff area and when we design libraries, there is a few rules of thumb that we kind of tried and true and now work, and that is a ratio of library floor area of staff to public space. And I think the 2 areas we have, one on the first floor and one on the second floor of the staff area, is about 11% of the floor area of the building. And the typical library ratio is around 19 to 20%. And, differing situations dictate kind of plus or minus of that 19 to 20%. And libraries that we've worked with kind of go from 11 to 12 to 20%. So in general, when we think about the functionality of the plan, I think we need to make sure that we are allocating the right amount of space. And I think we have that ratio really in a very economical kind of zone. We can look at how that might get adjusted a bit to get more benefit of staff views to the west, but it could become pretty tricky to get it to still function. We have the zones of the staff areas kind of on the periphery, so the majority of the public area remains very flexible. But all your points, comments are duly noted. We'll take a look at that.
I just think 150 square foot offices in today's world, I do some office work, and that seems generous. And I'd rather put that towards break rooms and open space for more staff collaboration. I'm not saying, I'm not focused on I'm not focused on the percentages of what should be allocated where, but I would rather see more collaborative workspaces for staff than private offices.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how it is now over there, right? Upstairs at the library, they just have one big open space, and they do all sorts, they do everything, but they don't
That could
have.
never be replicated.
No, that cannot be
That
replicated.
space
Charm.
But the thing is, it is open space, and they are all working together in there, so.
They're all hearing each other's conversations.
Yeah, and we do have that a lot. There is a lot of open. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was done.
I was just going to say, there is quite a bit of work room space, open space. I think the offices, we could provide you more detail what happens in those. A couple of them are actually more than one person in there, so they are, the Councilman, you mentioned the size of them, the kind of dual use, and that area would be utilized whether there's a door and a wall there defining it as an office or closed space or open space. It would require the same area. And then there are some specific functions. Obviously, director and HR might have some sensitive conversations that may need a space that is not an open workspace. But I think the idea is to be efficient yet functional, so library staff can do the great work that they do, and also be flexible for things that change in the future. So these are all good comments to hear.
And what about, I think maybe even flipping either the green. I think what I'm trying to say is I think you've got some great views there. So putting the green against that wall to... I was thinking that too, looking at that, jumped out at me. And we can look at that. I think that my first concern might be that we would be creating a visual barrier to the public area in that corner. And where it is now, all the public area is very visibly controlled. We have to make sure we weren't causing any kind of
secluded areas.
I just think again, I want to beat it to capturing those southwest views, I think would be something to look at.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Have any comments or people? Or questions? All right. Peter, do you have anything else that you want to?
Yeah, just one more slide to kind of talk a little about next steps. So the council meeting this evening is very helpful, and thank you for your comments. The next milestone, as Mark mentioned, or maybe Brian can call, we have a deadline delivery of schematic design drawings, and then after that, we're going to have some more meetings, one with art and history, one with Parks and Rec, design committee meetings. We're going to start to talk about interior palette concepts. And then there's a meeting with the library board that will all happen between now and the end of the year. And then right after the first, we have a very important community presentation and city council presentation. So we are going to continue to advance all of this with your input to the next meeting with you all in early January.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you all are charging ahead through November, December. Tend to take a break then, but I think we're all going to be around, and I'm glad to see you're maximizing your time and moving ahead.
Thank you. That's all we have, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Do you have anything more on that?
Was that?
Mr. Regenstein, anything more on the library presentation?
No, sir.
Okay. We appreciate your presentation, and thank you for spending the time with us, and thank you as well, Ryan. Thank you. Okay.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. We are to the point where we get into public hearings. And we have a public hearing regarding an ordinance amending chapter 9. Ms. Hollywood, would you like to please comment?
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending Chapter 9, Local Business Taxes and Regulations of the Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Solicitors, Panhandlers, and Peddlers, amending registration process, amending regulations related to panhandling, providing legislative findings, providing for penalties, providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Dan, would you like to introduce the item?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this item was introduced a couple weeks ago into the record. Basically, this ordinance, it regulates our door-to-door solicitation as well as panhandling. The revision brings language that is up to date to what we actually are doing in practice, and it makes other amendment changes that makes it consistent with Chapter 9 of the overall Land Development Code and Code of Ordinances. It also regulates when it comes to the panhandling. The last time this was touched was in 97, and since then several court rulings have changed the way we can regulate that. So this puts that into compliance with everything. Again, we talked about it in a lot more detail during the introduction, so I'm happy to answer any questions, but staff does recommend that council adopts ordinance 1436, amending Chapter 9.
Thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions of Dan? Okay, let's open the public comment period. Would anybody in the public like to comment on this ordinance? Okay, let's close the public comment period and bring it back to the council for any further discussion or a motion.
I'll move to adopt ordinance number 1436, amending Chapter 9, Local Business Taxes and Regulations of the Code of Ordinances, Article 2, Solicitors, Panhandlers, and Peddlers as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel? Aye. Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, old business. Mr. Regenstein, anything you'd like to report?
No, sir.
Okay, consent agenda. Anybody on council wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Okay. Is there anybody from the public like to comment on consent agenda items 2 through 9? Okay, seeing none, let's close the public comment period on the consent agenda and bring to council for discussion or a motion.
I'd love to make a motion to approve the consent agenda for November 11th, 2024.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
And a second. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Wurtzel. Aye. Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Consent agenda approved. Public period. This is the time when anybody who has anything on their mind they'd like to get off their mind in public. It's your moment. We have one person, this is the public period generally. If there's a particular agenda item that you want to address later, we'll have a public period for that as well. And I have an indication Mr. Andrew Ware might have left.
Okay. Oh, this is not good.
Yes, Mr. Ware may be back. And Mr. Kunihiro also. Oh, there he is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Where's Kunihiro?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'm Curtis Kunihiro, 106 Kyle Drive, Maitland, Florida. Last meeting, I had complimented the city on how well we took care of the aftermath of the hurricanes, and especially Hurricane Milton. The debris was taken care of Berger and company, and I appreciate that the streets were all cleared off and all. My next door neighbor has a situation. She's here tonight. And Perry Sheldon. They had 2 trees that were in the right of way. They're very close to the street side curb. And during Hurricane Milton, both trees came down. The background on these trees are that the trees were squarely in the right of way. They were declining. The city had been out there. The arborist apparently had promised that the trees would be taken out. And I can tell you that the trees were very much in decline. We already had a branch come down in the road, and these branches are huge. They're over 12 inches in diameter. I had, after that happened, I drove on the other side of the street just so I wouldn't be crossing underneath that branch. So the trees were definitely a hazard. And what happened is, with the way the winds blew for Hurricane Milton, the trees blew away from the street. They are partly in the right of way, partly in the Sheldon's yard, and then part of the tops of the tree are again in the right of way. I'm here in support of my neighbors. I believe that the city had committed to remove those trees because they're a hazard. It's taken quite a while for the city to move forward with that, and in the meantime, we had a hurricane. So I would please ask that the city honor their commitment to take out these trees from Mr. and Ms. Sheldon's yard, and do it, with the city approved vendor that was approved in the last consent agenda. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kunihiro. And Sheldon, would you like to address us?
Thank you. Good evening. And thank you, Curtis. He pretty much said it all. A few years ago, 2 years ago, in the spring of 22, oh, by the way, and Sheldon, 100 Kyle Drive in Minnehaha Shores. In the spring of '22, the city arborist Alan Holbrook, along with Dale from A Budget Tree, came and examined the trees and said they were on this city, obviously on this city right of way, on Kyle Drive in front of our home. Mr. Holbrook reported that they were considered critical and would be removed by the city. I was told that there were other trees that were prioritized, rightly so, understood at the time, but that they would be removed as soon as possible, estimating 6 to 8 months. Many emails were gone back and forth, and the report of concern on your website about the state of the deteriorating trees. Unfortunately, both of the trees have come down and are in our yard. Right now, they're actually blocking the stop sign. When you stop at the stop sign, you can't see onto the Kyle side from the corner of Minnehaha. You're on the corner line. So they are a safety concern as well. So I'm here, as Mr. Kunihiro said, respectfully to ask that the commitment is honored to remove the trees. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Schoen. Does anybody else like to take advantage of the public hearing? Okay. Seeing none, let's close the public period. And I would just say that we appreciate your bringing your concerns to the council. I think probably all of us have seen emails on this, and have information on it. And I know I've talked to the city manager about it. So we'll continue to work on it, see what we can do on that. And I don't know if anybody else has anything to report this evening on that, but I'm sure you've been in contact with the city manager and other folks. So we will take your concerns very seriously and be back in touch with you. Thank you. All right. That is the public period. We're moving on to decisions. And first is ordinance number 1437. Lori, would you please read the ordinance title?
Ordinance number 1437, an ordinance of the city of Maitland, Florida, amending the code of ordinances of the city of Maitland by adding new sections to chapter 10, offices and miscellaneous offenses, prohibiting camping and sleeping on public property, providing for codification, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, Mark, would you like to introduce the item?
Certainly. On March 20th of this year, the governor approved House Bill 1365, creating a new section in Section 125 of the Florida statute. What this bill did was prohibit cities and counties from authorizing or otherwise allowing any person to regularly engage in public camping or sleeping on any public property under the jurisdiction of the county or the city. There was one exception built into the statute, that is that the county may designate public property for camping or sleeping for a period of 1 year if the property meets certain requirements under the Department of Children and Families. You have to have state secure, has to be sanitary, have to provide health services. The county can designate those in the cities also, but not without city approval. Chief Manuel and I met with the county a couple weeks ago to talk through this, along with the other police chiefs and city administrators, to see how we were approaching it. The county was concerned that their situation is a little more complicated with their relationship with the sheriff's department and the county administration being a constitutional officer. We walked away from that meeting with the indication that the county had no plans to establish such a facility countywide. So beginning January 21st of January 1st of next year, any resident or business owner or attorney general specifically can bring a civil action against the city for violating the statute. So there's criteria for what they have to do if we're allowing camping or sleeping in parks and right-of-ways. So based upon this, in the statutory provisions, in order to avoid potential civil litigation, our PD legal advisor and Drew have taken a look at the options and drafted the attached ordinance, which prohibits camping or sleeping on public properties or right-of-way. This ordinance is intended to bring us into compliance with Chapter 125.0231 prior to the January 1st deadline. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions, Mark? Anybody, so we've got a public period on this ordinance. Anybody from the public like to address this? Okay, seeing none, let's close the public period. And if there's no further discussion, the motion would be ordered.
I just wanted to say, for posterity purposes, I don't like this, but it's not, but I understand the statute. So this is me speaking individually, but I've reviewed it and I understand why we're doing that, and certainly why it's important for the city to do that, given everything that Mark said, but that's all.
Well, it's pretty much, your hands are tied, I mean.
Understood, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll move to, I know they will probably move on to, so. I'll move to introduce ordinance number 1437, amending chapter 10, offenses miscellaneous, by adding new sections to Article 1 in general of the Code of Ordinances, and set a public hearing and action date for November 11th, 2024. December 9th, 2024. I was reading, just
I'll
should have known
second.
better.
Sorry, I'll second.
Okay, motion is second. Lawrence, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wurzel,
Aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Aye. Okay, it is approved on first reading. Next, we have Parks and Recreation Court Reservation Policy. Mark, would you like to introduce that item?
Certainly. As we discussed at the last meeting, this item is sort of broken into two items. The second piece of this is the funding. The first piece is the policy, so we'll get into the policy piece of it first. In the budget workshop held on July 15th of this year, City Council discussed various alternatives regarding the provision of permanent pickleball facilities at Minnehaha Park. As you know, the court is marked for both tennis and pickleball uses. During the reservation periods, tennis players can use the permanent net for tennis, or pickleball players can bring their own temporary nets for pickleball. Right now, we have Mondays through Wednesdays from 5:30 to 9 o'clock designated for open play pickleball. The rest is designated for reservation, where the courts can be used for either use. At the City Council meeting on July 22nd, the Council discussed funding options if we were to move forward with converting Court 1 at Minnehaha Park to 4 permanent pickleball courts. At that meeting, the Council determined that if the project were to move forward, it should be funded through our impact fees fund. Also at that meeting, we discussed the issue of scheduling the newly converted pickleball facilities. Specifically, whether the new pickleball facility should be operated using the current rental reservation structure used for tennis courts in the city of Maitland. Various concerns were brought up regarding overuse of the park, the parking, some of the overflow issues. Also talked about having those revenues help to fund the ongoing maintenance and the construction of the pickleball facilities. Put a little synopsis as a reminder in the staff report about how the reservation system works. The reservation system does work to give Maitland residents a slight advantage, because if you have an annual pass holder, you're able to reserve courts 2 days in advance versus non-residents that can only reserve them 1 day in advance. At the last meeting, agenda item was prepared for the funding. As we all remember, that took a sort of a different turn to discuss the policy and the funding. So there were a couple alternatives in general discussed. One was to continue with the policy for reservations for the pickleball courts. The other was to adopt sort of a hybrid system where you have pickleball open play a couple times a week during specific hours, and then have reservations the rest of the time. With the council discussion focusing on maybe 1 or 2 days of open play pickleball, while allowing the rest to be reservation. That discussion was deferred to tonight to continue that and then make a determination on funding under the next agenda. So with that, I can answer any questions. Jay's here also. At your pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Anybody have any questions of Mark? Anybody have any comments about the policy in general? What we should do going forward? Are we happy with the policy as it is?
Doesn't wait and just hear what the public had to say. Put it together.
Okay. No comments now, we can wait till after public period. Or
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Let's go to the public on this item. Larry Schnapper. Let's see here. Okay, we have another card from, let's see, Teller. And let's see. Is this Teller here or Mr. Teller? Next, we have a speaker's card for Nelson Blankenship. By sight, I don't see here tonight. We spoke last time. And another speaker's card for Doreen Olive. Yes, we have a taker. Well, would you like to, this is a public period, would you like to have your 3 minutes? So this item is the reservation system, or I'm sorry, the policy. Reservation policy.
Hello, I'm Chuck Fletcher, 620 Lake Catherine Drive. This is Doreen Olive, 620 Lake Catherine Drive. I guess real quick, we've already beat this to death and I know it. And I'd like to say first off, you know, we were given these courts in 2019. They opened up as temporary courts that we were supposed to have. It's 5 years later and they're still temporary courts and they're beat up pretty bad. For us to be asking for permanent courts, personally, I think y'all should have asked us 2 or 3 years ago to give us permanent courts. But saying that, it seems to be the council's biggest position is, we want reserve time, reservation time. Okay, let's talk about this. Right now, you rent one court. Doesn't matter who takes it, one court. That's 96 total hours a week that the city has. We get 10 and a half for free open play. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Now we're going to turn it, and the city's going to get 384 hours because now they're going to get 4 courts. They're not going to be setting up nets anymore. They're not going to be taking down nets anymore. So now what we're asking for, same thing. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 42 hours. Because now we want 4 courts. That's 42 hours. But that leaves the council 342 hours of reservation time. And if you're telling me the city of Maitland is going to use up 342 hours, I'll never believe it. Right now, the parking was an issue. Sure, from August to October, Katie Way was closed down. We were taking their overflow. Right now, 4 courts are busy, and that's it. Parking lots plenty empty, and I welcome you guys to come down and see it. We don't understand. You know, it would be one thing if we were asking for something ridiculous, but we're not. Do you realize in the state of Florida, Maitland's probably one of the few areas that doesn't have permanent pickleball courts? And I know you guys aren't pickleball players. I get it from that perspective, but we are. And we gathered 150 signatures from people all around that want to play pickleball. And I know that's not the majority. I know Maitland's got roughly 10,000 residents probably. But we just want some mercy here. We don't feel like we're asking for anything unfair. We live here. We love this community. We've lived here 25 years. And they don't charge for basketball. Basketball is a pickup game. Pickleball is very similar to a pickup game. We have a social time like nothing anybody's ever witnessed. I invite you again to come see it. People laugh, they play, they enjoy each other's time. They don't need to find partners to play. They grab a paddle, They show up from 5:30 to 9 because that's what we've been used to for 5 years now. And now, just because we're going to get permanent courts, we have to give that up? Shame on you. We live here. We pay our taxes like everybody else, and we want to be treated fairly. No, and that's not everybody, because I know not everybody's fighting this, but I don't get it.
I just wanted to also add, and I know that it's in the emails, but I have no idea how much of the emails anybody reads, because I don't really get responses too often. But I do want to make it very clear that if the goal is to go permanent and take away the open play, majority of people that we talk to that have been playing have said leave it as it is. That's how important our open play is. We don't want you to take it away from us. And of the 150 signatures that we got, there were 2 people that said that they couldn't sign. One said that he couldn't sign because of his job didn't allow him to sign petitions. And the other one was walking his dog and just wanted to keep walking his dog. But we explained the situation to everybody, and there, not a single person could understand why the city would do this. And Lori, you have so many misperceptions in your messages that you sent me. It's really very scary. It makes me understand how media gets things wrong and how, I mean, we've invited you to come out so that you could get a feel. And nobody's done that, so you don't understand.
And actually, with saying that,
Not make it personal.
Fair enough, sorry.
You still have time.
no, I was just going to say real quickly, on one of the emails that we got.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, no, then he can have my time.
One of them was, one of the council members told us that if we didn't like playing here, we could go, thank goodness, we could go play at other parks for free. That's
Very
totally
dis-
unacceptable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lori?
John, I don't imagine make a card,
Okay,
but I think I introduced the whole topic years ago.
okay. This is all on you then?
Yeah. Dale McDonald out of 108 Angelo Court, one of the most famous addresses in the city of Maitland. I played racquetball for 30 years. We paid to play racquetball. There's a facility that has to be maintained. There are people that have to make the reservations. It's not free. And so I love pickleball, but I can still play. I can't anymore. But it's a great outlet. And we are close to a decade behind doing permanent pickleball courts. And we've got great locations for it. You and I, we've all talked about it. There's spots in Minnehaha Park for racquetball or for pickleball courts today. So, and we know that. So, Minnehaha Park's a great spot. We've got bathrooms there. You know, we can do these things. It requires a commitment. But a commitment requires money. And so, while it's great that Katie Way is able to do that, you know, that the fact that the city of Maitland and every city is in the business of providing services for its citizens. And that's not free. It's indisputable. So, as I recall, the $5 to, it costs to require or to reserve a racquetball court. Wow, I can do that. You know, so one of the things that we in the city have suffered from for decades, maybe longer, we're an incredibly cheap city that wants services for free. It's never going to be free. So with that in mind, I'm very comfortable with a pay-for-play scenario in making reservations. And so, thank you again. Sorry about the card.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
I didn't think I needed that.
We'll fill one out for you.
I thought you would.
And I see who I believe is Mr. Blankenship. Is that correct? Did you enter the room? You had, I called your name earlier. If you're still interested in the public hearing, please go ahead.
Nelson Blankenship, 541 Lake Avenue. Simple sentences are, people are enjoying it. It's one of the most favorite things they're doing right now. There are courts, and while they're playing on the 3 times present, the other courts are not near as busy. They're not even that busy during the rest of the week when you are charging. So it's interesting to me that when it's free, the people of the city really seem to show up, really seem to like it. I have to agree there's something going on with it. I also understand that City Winter Park is basically all pickleball free, and there are 18 cities in Central Florida that are free. And it seems like we've been affording it for 4 years. Why can't we continue to do it if it's that popular?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blankenship. Does anybody else like to speak on this? Mr. Kunihiro.
Sorry, I filled out a card for this, but I live in the neighborhood that's right next door to Maitland Park, and so I was kind of concerned about the traffic situation, also about cars being parked around the entrance. I can tell you honestly that on the open play nights, the Monday through Wednesday, we've had 5 nights since the last city council meeting, and I only saw 2 cars parked on our street. They were parked legally, they weren't creating a hazard, and it was only on one of those 5 nights. So I don't have a problem with open play continuing. I understand what Dale said about, the cost to maintain. I'm kind of surprised actually that the folks kind of act entitled, okay?
Let's not make it personal again, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. There is a cost to maintain facilities. The next item on the agenda is to get funding. And keep in mind that that funding is leapfrogging the maintenance of the park, of facilities that are already there, facilities that could be replaced. And I personally, I'm okay with that. Okay, but please don't feel like you're entitled, because it's just not, the way we should act as neighbors. Okay, I'm okay with the pickleball being a permanent court system. I'm okay with some open play, similar to what they have now. I'm fine with that. I don't think that there's any type of negative impact on the neighborhood, and so and the park is getting a lot more use at night. So I'm in favor of that. I can't speak for my neighbors. I have tried to talk to Aaron, who lives closest to the courts, but I just haven't had a chance to get with him. But I haven't heard anything from our neighbors about complaints about pickleball. So please consider their request for open play, and I hope the next agenda item gets passed also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kunihiro. Anyone else for the public period? Okay, let's close the public period and bring the discussion to council. Anybody have comments on this?
I think one thing that's, from my perspective, important for framing is that my understanding of open play is a style of play, which was also described, I think, as round robin or something like that, as opposed to open meaning free, which I think that those terms should not be conflated. And I say that to say that it is not my intention, and I haven't heard anyone on council during our meetings, which is the only time, as I know sometimes we have to repeat for everyone else who doesn't know, that we can't speak to one another about these things other than when we're sitting up here. But that it's no one's intention to take away that style of play. There's no proposed regulation, or have I heard one proposed to like prevent round robin style of play. It's simply an issue of cost. I understand that other cities have been brought up. I did research at length a lot of other cities. I have a spreadsheet, and I really did that just to see what other cities, maybe idea generation. Sometimes, you know, there's things that I like a template, as I always say. And so one thing I noticed is that, first of all, there's definitely disagreement. You know, I know from conversations regarding how many of those cities that really offer open play. My number is quite smaller. However, what I did notice is that all of the cities seem to have did not have hybrids. It was typically all open at a specific facility, maybe not for that entire municipality, but at a specific facility or not. The ones who had periods of free, non-charging open play during were typically larger facilities with a large number of courts, like Candyland, which is a fun name, was one of them, has 16. But also the open hour play days, I noticed, were things like Mondays at 9 a.m., Wednesdays at 10 a.m., things that I would assume, and I could be assuming incorrectly, would not be terribly popular if that was our compromise. And so when we talk about the number of hours that are available and so on and so forth, I mean, those are somewhat misleading numbers in the sense that not all of those hours are equally attractive to all people. All of that being said, as we said last time, the reason I initially thought all of this was a good idea, even though we were skipping the line and kind of going outside of our Parks and Recs plan and all of that, was because of what we could get for that amount of money, and the fact that, like tennis, this helps to pay for itself. And so I have always seen those things, but I see this as an issue of treating everyone the same, not only for tennis, but also just all people who play pickleball. You know, you can play it literally however you want. No one's trying to take that away. Literally, this all came up because we were trying to offer something and not take something away. It's simply a matter of having to pay for it, and that's it. The agenda report does publish that for all the kids under 16, residents are free for annual passes to reserve, and at most a resident would pay $48 a year for at least 1 2-hour reservation every day, if I'm not mistaken, and all of the advantages like we talked about. So certainly not an overly drastic cost, and that's really what this conversation is about. And I hate that it's become open play or not, because it's really just about charging for a service. I also would hesitate on a couple of things that I would just like to caution on, and then I'll sit back and everyone else, you know, has their opinion. But I think that I would be reluctant to consider anything that was so overly complicated that it put a lot of onus on our staff, particularly because it's not staffed out there regularly, as opposed to Maitland Community Park. Secondly, my concern is if we were to make some very specific, you know, 2 courts at this time, you know, something very specific as an attempt to compromise, and I think a good well-intentioned attempt, that if that doesn't work out, because there's just some room for not knowing exactly how things will really play out. I know that I've received more calls in the last 2 weeks since the last meeting from people who are really highly in favor of reservations, probably because they heard how the meeting went. I don't think any of it, we have any way of knowing what's really representative of the majority of whoever. But that being said, I think that if something doesn't play out the way that we would want, I think it's best for Parks and Rec, or even Parks and Rec Advisory Board, to be in a position to be able to make those adjustments over time. I think we're seeing now what happens when people get used to something, and some people like it and some people don't. And then if we have to change that later, I feel like we're just setting ourselves up for additional circumstances like this, where we tried to do something good, or the city tried to do something good, people got used to it, and for some people that caused an issue. And so to me, that's why it's always been my position that if we go to reservation only, we know how to do that. It would become 4 courts instead of the 1 court that you can currently reserve. So that would improve it. The pickleball nets would be there permanently, so we would no longer have to worry about staff getting in and out. And as Parks and Rec monitors the situation, as they collect data in terms of who's reserving when and all of those things, if adjustments are needed, again, hopefully Parks and Rec could deal with that, or the advisory board. But if not, we're here, and certainly not personally, and I'm sure no one else, not closed-minded to hearing anything else. So that is all.
Yes, I agree with you. In fact, one of the things that I was telling Mark earlier is we need to give it a chance. I'm hearing no before we even give it a chance. And this reminds me, and I'm going to say it again, it reminds me of Fort Maitland. What do you mean I got to have a sticker for my boat? What do you mean I got to pay for parking for my trailer? I mean, it's the same thing. And I've had calls there about it, and I've heard it here. It's like, well, there's not enough parking, create more parking. Well, we're here to make parks. We're not here to make parking lots. We're here to have green space, places for people to play. So that's where, last time we met, that's where my worry was with that. I think earlier, when I left, I was all like, nope, reservations. But now that, I've kind of started thinking about it, I kind of like the idea of doing both, have some open play, but then reservations on the busy day to give parents a place to park with their kids or whoever else comes out, and at the high times. So we don't have 25 people. And that was another thing. Last meeting, they were like, oh, this is only half the people we got. The other half are out playing. I'm like, that's a lot of people. And I think my last point is, so Mark, and I haven't asked this, so I'm going to address this to you. They pay the $5 an hour, right? Or if they're Maitland residents, they can buy a year, just like with the boat. You can buy a sticker, or you can buy a year sticker. But if I get my year, and everybody buys one, and we have extra money that year from that pickleball court, where does that go?
That's discretionary spending.
Is this discretionary?
Yes.
But we could make it go to Parks and Rec, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's going to go to something that's going to help everybody out. It's going to help the city out. So, I mean, I know it's $5 an hour. How much did you say a year?
$48.
$48 a year. I mean, I go out to lunch with me and a friend, and I spend almost $48 on lunch. So, and I don't think it's a big ask. And you get 2 hours. So that's kind of my thought. That's where I am.
So I hear there's a comparison of Fort Maitland, which I think is on point and we were fixing a problem at Fort Maitland, which was that there was always a parking problem at Fort Maitland. That was part of the problem, is that we had a parking problem, and also our residents were not being able to get out on the lake because non-residents were coming in and taking the parking spaces. And so and we didn't design, I don't think the idea on Fort Maitland was to generate revenue. It was to kind of provide a service for the residents. It was to hopefully open up the parking for the residents. And so I see this as looking at what the residents want, and I've heard, I think we've all heard from a balance, which is some people want open play and some people want reserves. So I do think there's opportunities for both. I think the other thing on parking and the use of the spaces, so I played pickleball a few times. I played last week with my son who wanted to play, and we went to Phelps Park because we knew we could get spots there, and it was us and one other. It was kind of raining, so it's not a great example, but I don't know how many courts are there. Not Phelps, I'm sorry, Cadway. I don't know how many courts are there, but there's a lot, and it was us and one other people using the court. I think the thing with the misconception on reservation systems, and it would be less impactful, is that I know when I've gone before, sometimes 8 people go and reserve 1 court. So you reserve 1 court and you go as with however many different teams and you kind of rotate in and out, but it's on 1 court. It's not to say that just because somebody's reserved 1 court doesn't mean it's only going to be 4 people that show up. So I don't know that the impact of the use of the court from a parking standpoint or from an impact is going to be that, could potentially be that different if you have open play or not. So I think that there's potential that you have the same number of people on waiting to play, whether it's reserved or not. So I think this is just truly evaluating whether or not, and again, revenue standpoint, we're increasing the revenue, even if you still left open play, you'd be increasing the revenue to repay, if you wanted to view it that way, for the courts, because we were expanding the number of courts. So the opportunities for the city to generate revenue from the courts is going to be expanding, because now it's 1 court that gets rented, now we're going to have 4. So the number of times and opportunities to rent the courts is going to be expanded, whether there's open play or not. And again, I don't think we viewed any of these necessarily as revenue makers. They're just controlling and hopefully giving everybody the opportunity to play. And that's part of it, is that if there's a reservation system, it's making sure that certain people can play when they want. I know there's been conflict about, hey, when is the park busy? And typically the pickleball, when is that going to be done? And I was talking to Mark today, we have the kiosk rental, it would be over by the time the open play really starts. So the conflict with people who are using that park, how can we just make sure that there's no problem? We've heard from residents today that said the parking in the neighborhood isn't bad, which is, I think, was our concern a lot, which was, is there an issue with the parking in the neighborhood? Mark about, making sure that if we were to go back to some open play, how could we just make sure and enforce if there was parking issues, making sure we were staying on top of that. So to me, this is just balancing what we hear the residents want, and I think I've heard from both about open play and having merits of open play and then merits of having a reservation system. And what I don't want to do is get ahead of a problem, so we are anticipating a problem with permanent courts, and we're going to kind of be proactive on that. And I'm not sure, based on the use case with permanent courts, if we're just getting ahead of ourselves with we're seeing a problem that's not necessarily going to be created. And so I just don't want to get ahead of it and say, hey, we're going to change this and get rid of open play to eliminate or to potentially prevent a problem that I'm not sure is going to be there. So I would be in support of having open play, whether we do it. I think right now it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday.
You mean
Tuesday.
free? When you're saying open play, you're meaning...
So open play, and again, I don't want to get hung up on what I'm just saying, but yes.
Just the charge.
So the charge would be, and I think the difference is on that is that I do think there is an element to, again, we went out on Saturday night. Last minute, we needed to burn some energy off of an 8-year-old, and we're like, let's go bring some pickleball and play. And we didn't reserve a court, we didn't have to, there was lots of courts available. I think you made very good points there about how that's a huge facility, and I don't know how many courts, you all probably know, there's a bunch of courts there. But we had our pick, and I do think there's value to having that. I have also heard from several people who say that there's value to just knowing that there are only 2 of them, and they don't know another twosome to go play and reserve a court, so there's value to having a designated time where they can go up and play, and they know they're going to be able to have a game to play. So I do think there's value to what we would call open play, which is free, which is really not, again, if we're not looking at this truly as a revenue generator, it's just having the service and making sure that everybody who wants to utilize the service utilizes it in a way that they think is the way they envision utilizing it. And I think we're getting a little hung up on the charge side of it, because I want to say that I think that this is really about providing a service and making it uniform and making it an organized kind of opportunity for people to use and a service. And I don't know that I'm not super hung up on the charge side of it as I am on the reservation side, being a way for people who want to have that kind of view of pickleball, they can do it. But I also think the view of people who go out there and just want to put a paddle in a rack and play, and they kind of view that as the open play kind of scenario. I don't know that we need to change that or eliminate it.
Yeah, I think my concern is just what if the people who prefer playing with their friends kind of say, well, they don't have to pay, why do I have to pay? Or the tennis players say, well, where's our open free hours? I understand that the sports are different. I get that. I've heard. I don't need to go there to see it to know. I get it. But I think that that's part of the concern. And for me, the revenue generation was just part of the pitch originally in terms of making it skip the line. I agree with you. That's not the primary thing. I think it was more the control of the situation. I've even talked to people who enjoy the open play style but don't like how it gets commandeered by certain people. You know, it's all very specific. And so to me, this is a Parks and Rec programming thing, just like they could do leagues. There's so many different things. I've seen and talked to, you know, Jay and Mark about some of the cities like Winter Springs who does charge, but they have, you know, very complex calendars that allow people of certain skill level, you know, so on and so forth. Like there's a lot you can do from a programming aspect if people, what they really are interested in is showing up at a certain time. I just think, and I also don't understand what our direction would be. Are we going to tell Parks and Rec or the city what days of the week they have to do this, or how many days of the week? You know what I mean? Like how involved in micromanaging are we getting in this situation?
We are getting very involved, but I think the idea on that was not because we were the most fit to do that, because we're probably not, but because this had gotten to a level where instead of having kind of the staff being put in position on this one, since this became kind of an idea, it started, I think, with us with saying, hey, we're going to change the policy for the funding side of it.
We just wanted to make them permanent, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's where this became kind of our issue from city council. I don't disagree that figuring out the specifics on this is probably best served with Parks and Rec, but because we kind of blended it in with the funding side, it's kind of now, if we made that decision, we should either have to stand by it and say yes, or change it so that it's not viewed as sort of staff making this decision. So that's why I think it's in our court. So no pun.
Let me ask a question. We were asked to, and I was happy when asked, to make 4 pickleball courts out of 2 tennis courts, right?
1 tennis court.
2 out of 1.
4 courts out of 1 tennis court.
Okay, 4 out of 1 tennis court. And there came a cost with it. And what was the cost? $18,000? $16,000. And, you know, to say that, you know, to reserve it, I mean, to be able to reserve it free for a year for $48 or $5, I mean, we were asked to do this and we said yes. And so, I mean, listen, again, like Mr. McDonald was saying, I used to be a big racquetball fan. If I wanted to go play racquetball, I had to go join the YMCA, or I had to move to a place that had it. And so I paid my rent. I paid the YMCA. If I go down here to Mayo, I have to pay there. So it's the same. The tennis players have to do it. I just, you know, I know it's not a generator, but it helps. I mean, if he asks us to do something, it just helps to compensate that cost of what we're doing. So we're asking the other residents, Maitland, to incur that cost. And I know that we do stuff all the time like this, but at the same time, you know, it's the cost of doing it. And we're going to have to reline it again, probably in a couple of years. And then probably have to, you know, and then you got to seal it and do all the other maintenance to it. So it's just not a one-time deal that we're done.
But we're taking
there's still things that have to be done.
I'm with you. So, but I think we are, though, from that standpoint, we are taking what is 1 court for $5 and turning it into 4. Mark, is that the idea that fees going to stay the same, right? So I mean, you're taking 1 for $5 and turning it into 4 for $5. And if you multiply that by the hours that are rented, so you just multiply what we've currently got by 4 from income generating. So if you took out, if you eliminated, I don't know,
Absolutely.
3 hours a week, whatever, 6 hours, 9 hours, whatever the number is per week, from the fiscal impact on this, we're still netting ahead quite a bit with the fact, if you're looking at it that way, if you were going to truly just look at it as a dollars number, which I don't think you are. I think we're all looking at this holistically, but if you were just going to look at it from a fiscal impact standpoint, it's still.
Right, this is not a moneymaker.
This is still a net positive
Right.
when you look at kind of how should this pay for itself.
Well, my recollection of how we got into this was the idea for both the reservation system and reducing open play was because the concern was the park was overwhelmed. And we heard that up here on council, and we heard that from others that there was too much, parking was parking on the grass. There was, it was kind of Wild West over there. And if we're going to make those forecourts permanent, we're going to have a real problem. I think that, and so that was the reason, really, I think, is why we kind of instituted the reservation policy, because it's one we had. It was on the shelf. It was what we do for tennis. My evolution on this since that day in July was that I understand pickleball differently now. I at that point was thinking of pickleball really as just like racquetball or like tennis, and it's as I understand it now, it's fundamentally not. I mean, it can be. I mean, you can go out with a foursome or two and play if you want to ruin your knees. Take four if you want to save your knees. But it's really the open play style is a different thing. It's a round robin. It's where you jump in. It's where we've heard it all here. I don't have to go through it. We heard everybody at the last meeting, and they were all saying it's just a huge social event. It's a great deal, a lot of fun. People enjoy it. And in that style of play, and I am happy to be educated on this too, I don't think you can fundamentally put in a payment system. I think they are the same. I think open play has to be free because of the nature of it. Because otherwise, you're going to how do you make sure 30 people are paid when they keep hopping in and hopping off? I mean, who's going to say? If I have a reservation over there, I'll show you my reservation on my phone or whatever, and I'll say, this is my court, get off. But if you have an open play, it's the nature of the thing is it's open, and you can't charge. And I've done a little bit of research. Lori, I don't think I've done anywhere near as much as you, and I do appreciate your research.
We can't send them to each other.
Right. But I think I found one instance where they charged people to play, open play, and it was like, I don't know, $2, $5, whatever it is, and you had to wear a pin, and then that would identify you as the person, hopping in, and say you had a right to play at that point. But factually, I mean, we're not going to have anybody out there at night, watching it from 5:30 to 9:30. It's like, oh, that guy doesn't have a blue dot, get him off. I mean, it doesn't lend itself to that. So, and I'm not worried about the income. I mean, I think that if you were to project the funding for reservations on pickleball court over the next year, I think you'd end up in the hundreds of dollars. I mean, it's just not something that's going to pay for this. It really is more a function of giving you the right to get onto a court when you want to get onto a court, and that's what you're paying for. For open play, if this, I guess you kind of say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, if this has been going on for 5 years, and they've had open play for 3 nights a week, I don't see that, and there's not going to be a parking problem. Now, if there's a parking problem, that becomes a different issue, but we hear from Mr. Punahiro tonight it's not a problem in the neighborhood, the parking's not an issue. And Katie Way is open again, so that alleviates some of the pressure. So I don't know why, so the change that we would institute is to put a reservation system on it, and we did that in July. So the current status quo is open play, and people seem to like it. So I don't know why we would want to change that unless we had a problem with it and wanted to kind of crank it down. And I think we need to leave that discretion up to the staff to figure that out. If it becomes difficult, then I would say, yeah, figure out a way to dial it back because everybody can play. Now, that being said, I've also heard from people who prefer the reservation system because they have their friends and they want to go reserve a court, and they just can't do that from Monday to Friday. I would say it perhaps is a little disingenuous to say you're only asking for 11% of the court hours when you're actually asking us for 3 out of the 5 weekend nights, which is a lot. So those are the popular times to play on it. I know they are for tennis, and that's when people get off work and they want to go let off some steam, or if you go get an 8-year-old out of the court. The weeknights are the popular nights, and open play now dominates 3 out of 5 weeknights on it. So, and that's great if you're an open play person. It's not so great if you're a reservation person and you want to come in and play on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and you just don't have that option. So that to me is something that could be looked at and figured out. Is it unfair to the people who want a reservation to come and play because they know what they want to do, and they don't want to play with 30 other people, they want to play with their foursome, but they only have a shot at that on Thursday night or Friday night. And Friday night's a night, is date night, and pizza night or whatever, so you're down to one night. So I would be open to moving one of the pickleball nights from, if you were to say Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, or something like that. But I think that open play pickleball, to me, I do conflate the two, because I think you can't have a paid for open play pickleball system that is workable, or that you would need to have workable. I mean, if you're trying to raise money off it, that's one thing, but if you're trying to control the parking, well, you've already given that game away for having open play, right? So my thought would be, it ain't broke, don't fix it right now. If it becomes broke, if it becomes, once we put permanent courts in it, it becomes so attractive that people want to play, and they start parking on the grass, then let Jay figure it out. Let Jay say, we'll do 2 courts open play, we'll do 2 courts reservation on Monday, Wednesday, or something like that. Whatever. I mean, because I think the more you reduce open play, the fewer people are going to show up. But that's not what we necessarily want to do. We want to encourage as many people as possible to show up until it kind of chokes out other uses. So I don't have a problem with just walking back what we did in July and saying, reservation system, because it is what it currently is. I mean, it's like a reservation on Thursday and Friday, and the rest of the time as well. Everybody knows, kind of as a matter of course, that you can just walk onto those courts and not pay, and at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, because you had nobody's going to be here. So, and that's fine. But so I don't know. This seems to be like a popular recreational enterprise, and I would hate to jeopardize that because we were trying to manage an issue that is not necessary to be managed.
Okay, so before we get farther on this then topic, what are we asking for, Mark? Because where it stands now is that you want a vote that says what?
Well, we already had direction that said go to reservation full time, so
Okay.
I need some other direction.
So the direction would be, and would you need to get specific or not?
Well, if we're not, then we're going to be right back here.
Okay. So you want us to be specific?
Yes.
Why are we going to be right back here? Why
Because
can't the city just do?
somebody's not going to like it.
Well, right,
They
but
know
why
what
can't
the
staff
deal
do
is.
what they always
We
do
could,
when people don't like it?
but we can't prohibit them from showing right back up.
This is my concern.
Yeah.
We're going to become,
Well, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. I mean, I think that the direction, so the decision is not going to be, let's say that, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but the decision is to allow open play on a certain nights. I don't know that, and I think, John, you're right, I heard the same thing from, I think maybe that John heard, is that depending on Friday nights, not, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are the good nights, is what I heard someone say. So there is thought that, they would like to reserve a court on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe one of those nights. I think so. I've heard that too, John. But I do think that open play, bringing it back, keeping some schedule is valid. So what I don't know is that, Mark, are you looking for us to be specific and say, to John's point, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday? Or would you be open for us saying, or do you think it needs to say to that level, or if it just said 3 nights a week? Or do you really want to get to the total weeds of, and let me ask this, the follow-up to that is, if you said we made it Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, I'm just throwing out things, right? But we said that it could be, would you not want to have the discretion be, would you rather it come back here if we wanted to change
No,
those 3
I
nights?
prefer that it never come back here. I prefer that it would never be here. but that's where we are right now. And the challenge I have as the city administrator is that I'm more than willing to make a decision. I am less willing to make a decision that's going to make 3 of you angry. Because as those decisions build up over time, retirement doesn't come fast for me. I don't want retirement soon. I want to be here. I want to continue to work with you, and I don't want to do what you don't want to do. And that's my concern now. There seems to be a divide on the city council with the people that we have here, and that divide might be even bigger if we have a full council here. And I don't want to at this point in time say, well, this is my decision, and then I have any 3 of you saying, well, that's a bad decision, Mark, and then lobby me to make a different decision outside of a meeting.
I'm with you.
That's the challenge I have.
I've always been in the boat that, you open it up for free on the slow nights where people don't really play to generate those people coming out to start using at those times. So whatever, and I'm not a pickleball player, so I don't know what those 3 nights are, but those are the 3 that I would focus on. And then do reservation when it gets busy, because that's when you need the reservation system.
So, this is just, we have gotten, this is in the weeds for sure, so.
Yeah, but my memory, and part of my memory is really just stuff that didn't happen up here, so not like challenging anyone else's memory, but in all of my conversations with Jay is that the reservation ideas coming part of the motion was from like staff suggesting it basically, and that was part of my conversations with Jay. So I actually don't care, believe it or not. What I feel passionately about is that Parks and Rec should be entirely responsible for this. And I hear that they're not trying to avoid responsibility. It has come up here in a jumble. I think, but what I've talked to Mark about is that once we make decisions, if we do make a very specific decision, then it's like we're setting precedent, and then the precedent is that it always comes back here. Because then he's like basically, or Jay is basically undoing a council decision at that point. And so that is my concern. As I said, this will likely need to be adjusted, whether we set very specific instructions or not. That's just the way it goes. And the idea of this coming back up here to be micromanaged by council is like insane to me, and I'm sure all of us. So to me, I just want my direction to be, do your thing.
I appreciate it, but we just.
Give it to me to make a decision.
But that's why I asked.
But they are okay with that. I mean, it's just not wanting these like partial decisions.
If it's a bad decision, I just blame Jay for it.
But look, I'm hearing.
Of course not, Jay.
Well, the only two things that really are an issue here, in my view, is, other uses besides open play. Do we need to give them a fair shot? And the parking situation, and the neighbors. I mean, and those are the same thing, basically. When you overpark it, and you're parking in people's, streets, or you're parking on the grass, that's a problem. Other than those 2 issues, I mean, I don't want it to come back up here either. But I also, all those people who came here last time, I mean, they all had a very heartfelt, passion for what they were doing, where we left it in July was to eliminate it. So that's gone. So if we leave it in July, where we left it in July, that open play is eliminated. Unless we do something tonight, it's gone. So, and I don't know why we would do that. I mean, if we've heard that the parking's not an issue, but I do feel for the other uses, like give the other uses another night or something.
Well, that's what I was going with. If you take the 3 slow nights and you open it up for them to come in and use it, and then you don't have a problem on the busy nights because it's a reservation. Everybody's like has on their phone, yeah, my court. So I mean, that's just kind of like taking it to business. If these are my slow hours, I'm going to do buy one get one during this time or whatever, just to bring people in. So you got to look at it like that. And when is it the slowest? We need to get people in. Let's generate that and make those our.
So I asked the question to Mark specifically because I didn't want to say that the option is to just say we're going to do open play, allow open play back, and just leave it at that. Right? That's one option. Mark, as I'm hearing saying, that puts him in potentially an awkward spot, or because he's hearing a difference of opinion. And I, just on a personal note, I believe that everybody up here wants to do what's best for what they think in the city. I'm confident that everybody here has looked at this, researched it, and is making an informed decision on not anything but what they think is a good way to manage this park. So I don't want to put, though, because there's potentially 5 different views of how to manage this park, and I think what I'm hearing from Mark is he would rather there be a 3 vote. I mean, if this is what I'm hearing, you'd rather have 3 votes, one way or the other.
Either one way or the other. Either you turn it back over to me, let Jay and I make the decision, get with Miranda, make the decision, monitor what happens, which is what we do with any program. If the program is not succeeding, people aren't showing up for it, we have to make adjustments to it. We have a facility without a program attached to it, we have to make adjustments to it. We had this discussion during strategic planning on 2 other facilities we have. So we're in the process of rethinking those. Well, obviously very full of stuff right now, but we're actively rethinking those. So we have to go through that process and make those data-driven decisions. Right now, there's a lot of speculation going on what is going to happen after they reopen.
So that would, what you're talking about would go to John's point of, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
But then if we didn't add any reservations at all,
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable, and I'm just saying this because I think this is part of, from my discussions with Mark, why this is ordered this way. I am not comfortable, and I don't know how much it'll matter numbers-wise, but voting for the money, if we don't have any reservation system at all, because to me we're not improving anything other than the court, because we know for sure the very first petitions we got were people who didn't feel they had access. So if we don't, just to say like some open play will be allowed, like make sure to allow some open play and figure it out, okay, but to the extent of like leaving it exactly as it is, to me means leaving it exactly as it is.
So, Laura, can I ask a question? Did Mark actually? We do have a reservation system currently on pickleball.
No, not in pickleball. You can't reserve a pickleball court. You can only reserve the tennis courts, and that was part of my discussion with Jay originally before July, was that we were going to, I don't know if we ended up having to do this, but we would have to increase the subscription that we had, like a level for that software because of the number of court, like reservations, we were right on the precipice, and instead of 1 and 1, it would be 4 and 1. And so right now, someone would have to reserve the entire thing, bring their own net.
So like on Thursday night,
somebody reserves Minnehaha Court 1.
But then they would get all 4.
There could be one person with a tennis ball machine, practicing their returns, or 32 people.
But there's no reservation of the hybrid court on Thursday night.
There is.
Yeah.
What he's saying is someone
You would have to reserve the entire
Yeah, you're reserving
court.
a tennis court for whatever
So
use.
basically, it's excluding other people. It's limiting access unnecessarily because you don't need to have the whole one. You could have 4, and you have to bring your own net right now.
But
So I know people who can't come and bring their own net, and so then they can't play pickleball.
I think I'm
But
picking up.
there is a reservation system.
Well,
For tennis courts.
so I'm picking up on.
Mark is telling me.
No, it's a court. It's only
a
one.
tennis court.
It's a tennis court.
So John.
So I know there are 2 tennis courts there. One of them is lined. hybrid line.
Yeah, I'm talking about the court 1.
Okay, so the hybrid line one you cannot ever reserve.
You can only reserve it as a single court.
So you can reserve it.
As a tennis court without a pickleball net.
But if you want to play pickleball on it, you can
Reserve the court and you set up your
You
pickleball.
have to bring your own net.
So we're not talking about nets or other things right now. I'm saying.
Well, just because it's the facility that
But
would have
the
it.
answer to the question is yes, we have a reservation
We do.
pickleball policy.
I'm having trouble focusing with all of the noise from the peanut gallery. If we
Well,
can-
let's not.
Well,
So here, John, let me, can I tap this one?
No, the answer is clear. Yes, there is a reservation system for pickleball.
So,
On
John-
Thursday, if I want to play pickleball, I get that hybrid line court, I bring my net out there, I play pickleball. There is a reservation system for pickleball.
correct, to bring your own net. I've spoken
So
to
here's
people
what I
who
think
do
the
not own
nuance
a net.
is, if I can take a stab at this.
Yeah.
The only way it's like a city pickleball court is when it's open play. Because as my understanding, maybe I'm screwing this up, but on the open play nights, the city comes and sets up the court.
Yes.
So the difference here is that if we want to get really technical, I think you can reserve a court under the current system, but it's not set up as a pickleball court.
Right.
The only time it's actually set up as a pickleball court, and then there's 4 of them, is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when the city sets up for quote-unquote open play. however you want to call open play and define it may be different, but that's when there are technically.
I get it.
So our city only has pickleball courts that are city set up during open play as it currently sits. But in the future.
And it's unnecessarily limited because technically, let's say we have 4 groups of people who like to reserve courts, they can't all do it at the same time as it currently is. They would have to, so it's unnecessarily limited.
But to move it into the future, I think I was anticipating that there would be reservation systems for the nights that it wasn't open play. There would be a reservation system for the 4 pickleball courts going forward, even if we opened it back up to having some nights open play.
Yeah.
To move this along, because I know we all, I just want to ask, because I'm willing to do this any way you want, Mark, because I don't want this to come down. I'm with Lori. I agree that we are way in deep on this, and these are decisions best left to Parks and Rec and staff. However, if you feel like we've gotten to the point where this has to be a city council decision because you don't want it to, it's just not fair to put it on staff, then I'll make that part of the motion. But if you just want to say, if the motion is simple as, let's make this back to where the staff can decide of a blend of open play and not, and you can decide it, and if there's an issue and someone wants to complain in the future, then we can take it back up. That's fine. If you would rather have it be specific that we'll open up open play for 3 nights a week, and we can either set those nights if you want, or we can say those nights are to be determined by staff. And then, so you just tell me, I
would support that.
So what would you support? Tell me, because.
I would support, you'd have staff determine what 3 nights, and then the reservations.
What nights in general?
Well, it could be a weekend night too.
It could be anything, whatever the staff thinks is best. They're the pros.
Right. Taking into account the people, and Laura, I think you're right that reservation system hasn't gotten up and running, and so the people I've heard from just don't go there any longer because it's too difficult, and they feel like they don't have any shot at it. So I would like to. I like your motion, although it's not a motion. I like the feel of it, but I think if I were to vote for that, I would say, for Mark's purposes, my feeling is let's find a way to accommodate people who have not been accommodated so far on that, but also to certainly take into account popularity and if the idea for Parks and Rec is to get people out and moving, we know that's one way to do it.
So what if we said, to your point then, if you said 2 nights a week, Monday through Friday, and 1 night of Saturday or Sunday?
What if we just didn't have numbers? And my concern is with making it too specific. But, and again, my recollection of how this all came up really is that people didn't like what Parks and Rec was already telling them, and so they came to us to.
Well, that's what I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to do here.
So I don't like that. I don't like that precedent. I'm sure there are certain instances where big policy decisions that might make sense, like making these permanent courts, for example. But I just think that we have the same sentiment at this point, or what I'm hearing is that we all have the same sentiment, which is that there should be some aspect of registration or reservation rather to allow that improvement to further open it to other people who want that, and that if there can also be room for open play, whatever that looks like, whether it's charge, reservation, whatever, and that there's room for both, and that Parks and Rec is in the best position to decide that. So if our July decision we have to overturn is that, I don't recall the wording, but if it was reservation system exclusively, I believe, if I'm not misquoting, that we can take out the exclusively.
Here's what.
Can we just do that?
I hear you. Here's where I'm a little bit hesitant on that, is that right now it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is the current. I heard from John, you tell me if I'm mishearing you, is that John may think that taking one of those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays away, is that correct, John?
Or move it to a different night.
Moving that to a different night.
Just given the hours, it's 5:30.
So what I don't want though is, so that's John's thought, moving one of those nights. And Mark goes to set this policy, and then he hears from a bunch of people that says, hey, we want to keep it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then he's put in an awkward spot that he knows the mayor says.
So what you're saying is you want us to take the burden so he doesn't have to deal with it?
I'm just thinking, but I completely agree with Laura. I think, Laura, your point is 100% valid. I just don't know that that's fair to Mark or staff. Just that, because he knows up here that there's a sense that maybe one of those nights should move. And are we putting you in an awkward spot that's my question to you.
But isn't the general, I mean, I feel
So
like
you're
the
okay
more
with that?
general is actually better, and I
Okay.
feel like finding a point of agreement, which our spirit is the same at this point, right?
And just for the record, there will be an initial policy set. That if this goes through, we'll set that administratively. Then there's going to, right now, nothing changes. Nothing changes until the court shut down, it's reconstructed, and opened back up. So there's time here. We don't even know if the contractor's availability is right now, quite frankly. So it could be 4 more months before he can get back out to this job. Establish the initial policy, let it work. Jay, Miranda, and Maria are monitoring this to see who's reserving it, when it's being used, or our staff goes out there to check garbage and things, and check the parking lot, check the usage, so we get a feel for it, and if open play is over the top popular and nobody's reserving courts, that informs our decision-making process.
Okay. So I'm hearing that you're good with a more, so if the motion was that the policy should be changed, amended to allow for a mix of both open play and reserve court as staff seems fit, is that the direction?
That's very appropriate.
So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
All right. You got that motion down? Yep. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Laura, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wong.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. It is unanimous. We have tackled the reservation policy issue. Now let's tackle the issue of whether or not to make the course permanent. Mark, would you like to introduce that item?
Yes, this is the same item discussed at the last meeting. This is basically authorizing staff to reallocate the money from the Parks Trust Fund and earmark it to be spent for the rehabilitation conversion into the pickleball courts.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or more? No. Would anybody from the public like to comment on the issue of whether or not to make the course permanent? Going once?
I don't know, but I don't,
It's just a question of whether or not to make the course permanent.
well, yeah, well, obviously, we
That's all.
want to make the course permanent. We just,
Okay.
we don't understand though.
If you want to, you can come up now and take your
Okay.
3 minutes, or then it won't, it's a comment, not a question.
Okay, fair enough, but what I want to understand was this is where it all started, was when the courts were decided to become permanent. What does that mean? So if you're going to give us permanent courts, are you going to give us open time too? Free open time? That's all I want to know. Because last time when we did this, it was, oh yeah, we're going to give you the permanent courts, and the next thing you know, but we're going to have a full-time reservation system. But what nobody has even discussed, when we first got really active with this, we talked with Mark, we talked with Jay about, this is silly. We reserve the court, but we take down 4 courts. So now they're going to become permanent. You're going to get 4 full-time courts to reserve, and now you're giving everybody what they want. So I don't understand why the free open play has even been discussed, because you just multiplied your courts by 3. Before we rented 1 court, we had access to all 4 of them. And we asked Jay. Jay knows that we just don't understand. But now we do understand, and if it is about money at all, you have so many more courts now to rent. That's all. We just want to understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Collector. Does anybody else have a comment? Okay, let's close the public period.
I'd like to move to approve designated parks trust funds from Hill Passive Park to Minnehaha Park to create 4 permanent pickleball courts.
And I'd be thrilled to second that motion. Thrilled.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Decker?
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel? Aye. Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes?
Aye. Okay. That was painless. I think that's it for the business of the evening, although we now have reports. Don't run away.
Run.
Mr. City Attorney, do you have any reports for us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Just some quick updates on events coming up. This Saturday, the 16th, we have Movie in the Park, Despicable Me 4, starting at 6 p.m. Friday, December 6th at 6 p.m. is our holiday concert street party on Independence Lane featuring Michael Andrew and Swingerhead with his holiday show. So it's going to be a very special night. Holiday lights will be up, bounce houses, snow, so it'll be very festive, it'll be a good time. Saturday, December 7th at 5 p.m., Seasonal Light, our annual Christmas tree lighting, holiday tree lighting, Santa, music, games, so it'll be a good time there too. And then on the 21st, Movie in the Park, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, again at 6 o'clock, but also a reminder that the police department is holding its annual food drive through December 18th to help families in need during the holidays. So you can drop off locations right here at City Hall, the police department, community park, and Civic Center venue on the lake. So,
All right.
that's all I have.
A lot going on. Thank you. Madam City Clerk. Everybody in council?
Another great art festival. I thought they did a great job.
Yes.
Everybody involved.
Yes.
Performers, bands, the art, the organization of it. It was all well done.
Yes.
And great weather.
Very nice. Okay. I think that's it. We are adjourned.
Well.
Thank you.
Quiet.